This is Ricky Lai with a new review of Swans' newest, freshest, piping hot album, The Glowing Man. But before we get to the actual content of this album, let me supply you with some background information, because, with some albums, I don't exactly need to give you too much background information, but in this case, I feel I definitely do. Swans are a experimental post-rock noise band led by Michael Gira. And at this point, they are essentially now decades into their career. I believe they've been making music since the bloody 80s, and they're still going strong to this day. I love the way I said day there. Day. They have released vibrant, violent, visceral, volume-heavy music that is just crushing your eardrums as you listen to it. The band loves to make an absolute ruckus out of just making music, with crashing, chaotic highs and soothing, unsettling lows. Sometimes they've used this to create a really creepy, dark atmosphere, like on The Seer, which is my personal favorite. In 2014, they used layers of instrumentation, crazy build-ups, crazy climaxes, incredible noise and sound effects and abstract lyrics to create one powerhouse of an album called To Be Kind. It may not be my personal favorite, but this is probably the most epic album yet. In fact, trying to come out with an album after this that would top To Be Kind would kind of be an almost impossible task. So it seems for The Glowing Man, which is apparently the band's last record featuring the current lineup, this album isn't trying to top it, but rather trying to just play off some of the sounds that came on To Be Kind and using it to kind of bring a final curtain call to the band's discography, or at least for now. This album features a lot of noises, a lot of build-ups, a lot of musical moments that are very similar to Be Kind. And this can sort of either make or break the album, because, on one side of the argument you could say that's a good thing. On To Be Kind, these sounds were incredible, and to see them reappearing on The Glowing Man, might be seen as a good thing. But on the other side of the argument, it actually made a lot of the album feel quite predictable. On The Seer, Soundtracks for the Blind, To Be Kind, there's definitely similarities between those three albums, but they're unique because they have moments that feel unexpected and are supposed to surprise you a little bit. Swans is a notoriously loud and chaotic band, but on The Glowing Man it seems they're just reusing stuff that we've heard before. For example, the title track, which is the penultimate track on this album, The Glowing Man. It's got an explosive climax that really sounds a lot like Bring the Sun from To Be Kind. It feels too familiar, and whilst the familiar can be alright, in this case I feel the moments that would try to be surprising end up being quite predictable. And the thing is, with The Glowing Man, I feel they're also quite held back as well. The explosive moments on this album feel like they aren't quite as powerful as they could have been. And of course, with tracks that are over 20 minutes long, in which this album has quite a few of them, there are bound to be some great musical ideas. My irk is that these good musical ideas come in between rather copy-paste ones. So my problem wouldn't be with the length of some of these tracks, just more of what these tracks do over that certain length of time. Although, once I've got all of that out of the way, there are some great moments to this album that I do think deserve some recognition. For example, the first two tracks, I like what they're trying to do musically. They may be quite long, and some of my previous criticisms may apply to those two tracks, but I like what they're trying to portray. The first track, Cloud of Forgetting, is like a destructive wave wreaking havoc on some sort of place, or maybe even the whole planet. And then the second track, Cloud of Unknowing, is like the aftermath, which is far more unsettling. There's an overwhelming sense of doom to the track Cloud of Unknowing, which I absolutely loved. The bells in the middle of that track, the way they're just chiming, brings in a feeling similar to the track Final Hours from Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. The way it brings up this post-apocalyptic feel that is just so harrowing to listen to. And perhaps even Frankie M, I like that track. It's a pretty long track, but I love what it's doing at the start all the way to the end. At the start, it's got these waves of what I can only describe as musical fog, icy, cold fog and wind just gushing overhead, and then suddenly it breaks into part of the song which actually has this consistent chord progression and rhythm, which makes it sound a lot more like a traditional rock song, although there are still hints of this unsettling cold fog just washing in from time to time as the track goes on. The lyrics are also repeating phrases such as ODMA, heroin, opium, which hints to me that maybe this track is about drug addiction, the highs and the lows. And then we have like 3 shorter tracks, or at least they're short in comparison to the rest of the album. And I feel those are actually far more interesting to listen to than the tracks that spread over 20 or even 30 minutes of playtime. It seems these tracks get to the point a lot quicker and yet manage to display more of a powerful effect. For example, People Like Us. It feels like the soundtrack for an abandoned saloon in the Wild West. Or When Will I Return, which is honestly the standout for me. Michael Gira brings his wife Jennifer Gira on to sing vocals on this track, and she's essentially telling her story about a horrific sexual assault against her. In the first half of the song, she's retelling the story with acoustic guitar, bringing the attention only to the vocals. And in the second half, it bursts into this organ-driven anthem with a marching pace, Michael just ominously going, "Ah," and then Jennifer joining in and saying, "I'm alive." And this repetition is so powerful because to me it sounds like she's rebuilding her strength. She's finally gaining the will to overcome this traumatic event that she experienced. And it's a moment on the album where I was absolutely captivated by not just the instrumental but also the story that this track was telling. And there was also the final track, Finally Peace, which is not just a conclusion to the album but also a conclusion to Swans. I love the little tinkle of piano at the end, which to me is a really nice touch. It's like a final bit of light just kind of fading out, and then that's it. That's the conclusion to the album, Swans, the stories that have been told over this immense discography. It's probably not the most unique in the discography. It's not a huge standout for me, but it's okay. It's just moderately okay, which is why I'm probably going to give it a 6 out of 10.